By wisdom a house is built, and by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all pleasant and precious riches. Proverbs 24, verses 3 and 4. Hello, ladies. I have created this Housewife Radio, and I'd like to welcome you. I'm actually honored that you came, and I hope that you get a lot done today and that you can be revived a little bit by having something to listen to as you go. If you're new here, please go over to my blog, for which I provided a link in the description box, and listen and work while you listen on my blog, because that's what I have done is I've embedded it there, and I am making these for my blog, and I don't really have any kind of a community going on here on YouTube, so please go over there and then you can leave a comment. There are no comments on the YouTube video because I just didn't want too much social media going on. And so today I have already been up quite early. The weather was just terrible out there, and there wasn't much to do that I could do outside, but I remembered something very interesting about that and this mind over matter thing. When it comes to getting dressed and getting ready, is you have to kind of ignore your mood, you have to ignore the weather, and you have to keep your goal ahead of you, and you have to master it. You have to master all these elements. And I remembered my husband's elderly uncle. He was such a funny man. He got up one morning and he was not very happy with the weather, and he had some things he wanted to do really bad. He was really looking forward to it, and something went wrong, and he said to himself, and his mood began to plummet, and he said, "Self, be quiet. I'm going to do this." And he said, "Self, get out of the way. We're going to have a nice day." Something like that. I thought that was so interesting. It is a matter of conquering the temptation to let the weather control you, to let your mood control you. You just have to absolutely ignore your mood and create a new mood. Create your own mood. And that's why I suggest getting dressed first and getting ready, putting a color on that inspires you for some reason. Today I just felt like blue, and this is the only blue that I had. It's a plaid shirt that I got at the Tractor Supply store. And you know, the country women are just as materialistic as the women that live in the cities and the suburbs, because we want every color of the plaid shirts, and we want all those boots, and we want all the hats, and all the different kind of wagons. There's tipping wagons, and there's different kinds of wagons, and there's decorative wagons. We want them all. And so anyway, get yourself dressed up. Fix your hair, fix your face. Do something to yourself that gives you a mood. Create your own mood. Forget about the weather. Forget about your mood when you get up. Forget about what the house looks like. Get yourself ready. And somehow that gives you a beginning. And you can create your own world with that, with simply the simple fact of getting yourself dressed. You know, I talked to you in an earlier video about royalty and about royal dressing and royal dining and royal this and royal that. And can you imagine a royal person not being prepared for the day ahead, or dressing in a way that you couldn't identify them as male or female? No, they're very particular about that, aren't they? And we can learn a lot from them. They have a certain protocol, and they have to also dress in such a way that they don't depress other people, and because they owe their existence to their constituency. And in a way, we're like that too, and we owe our Lord our loyalty and our gratefulness. And so dress in a way that makes you feel grateful to be alive, that makes you feel happy. And this will also have a big effect on how you approach your homemaking, how you approach the home. Maybe today is a day you're not going to do anything, but even then you have to be in a happy mood. You have to be in a nice mood, or no one will like the home. If you want your children to have a respect and an honor for the home, you're going to have to set the mood. Remember the phrase, her presence lights the home. Does your presence light the home, or does it darken it when you walk in? You have to be careful what you what you say, the expression on your face is, whether or not your children know that you approve and love them. And this is so important, that your appearance, you know, I know sometimes when I was growing up, I would see other people's mothers, you know, and felt real sorry for the children because the mothers didn't care. And it was back in the 1950s, and there was a problem, you know, that some women who were on the farms or homesteads just thought no one was going to see them, so they didn't take very, very good care of them. And I think the children would have liked for their mothers to have been pretty, at least try to be pretty. And wasn't there a song, a popular song, about not letting yourself go? I think I'll try to see if I could find that and embed it. It was pretty good, and it was popular in the, I don't know if it was the 60s or late 50s. So now that you are, I'm hoping that you are dressed, that you're going to ignore the circumstances around you, ignore the weather, ignore whether things have gone well for you or not, and at least get dressed. That makes a big difference. So I have previously posted for part of the homemaking, housekeeping, I previously posted a garland that I made, and I am going to just go and get that, I think, so that you can see it firsthand. And the reason I wanted to show you this in real life was because I had wanted to get some kind of a garland and drape it across my mantle, just to give it a little bit of life. You know, when you're in a home and you are a homemaker and you're full-time, you need to make the atmosphere a place that you want it to be. And that's why I do this, because I'm going to be here and I'm going to see it. I'm going to see it. I'm going to see the four walls. Sometimes I might not get to go anywhere because I don't feel like it, or for some reason not able to. And so I want to have a pretty atmosphere. I want to have something that inspires me. I can't thrive in a negative area. And so this is what you get at the Dollar Tree. And on the part where the leaves are, there's a little stem still sticking out there. See there? So what I did is I took one of these, which I also got at the Dollar Tree, and removed the flower. It has a little stem too, and that stem fits over quite nicely on the little piece that's sticking out of the leaf. So then you've got the leaves behind it. So you have to just pull that off and put it on, and that's what you have. And so then what I ended up with was this nice garland that I made for about $4, and a little more than $4, which I believe at Hobby Lobby probably would have cost me maybe $9, you know, because they have them on half price. But maybe sometimes they're more than that. Sometimes they're $15 when they're not on half price. And I've used pieces of lilacs for the filler, because the vine has these blank spots, these bare spots all over it. So that's why I wanted to do that. I just thought I would show you that. And I did post it so that you could see step-by-step instructions. So now I'm going to go on, if we've got the appearance part ready, but also remember that if you could possibly prepare the day before, prepare the appearance of your house, so that when you get up in the morning, you feel like somebody cares about you. Somebody, it's like going on a vacation, isn't it? You get up in the morning, everything's in place, everything's prepared for the guest. And treat yourself like a guest and get your house ready so that the next day you can start with possibly a better mood, so that you wake up and the house is prepared, and that it's fresh, and that there's a clean towel laid out in the bathroom for you, and that there's a clean towel in the kitchen, and that things are picked up and fairly good, so that when you start your day, the house starts a new day too, and it's clean. And it'll improve your mood too, and also inspire you to dress for it. So dress up your house and dress up yourself. Now, one of the reasons that I decorate, I know a lot of people don't care to decorate and am not interested in it, and that's fine. And I learned many years ago that you could use just whatever you had. If you had a bit of furniture and if you had a lamp, that was the decoration, and that's all you need. But one of the reasons that I do it is that I wanted to uh, fill my house and arrange it in such a way that the rest of the world did not seem so much better, did not seem glitzy to me. In fact, it was better to come home. And I got to where we wanted to stay home. Our whole family, we would have preferred to stay home and eat at home, because the food and the preparations and learning to cook and creating menus. Creating menus is another thing that's a lot of enjoyment for the family. If you can create menus and you consult everybody as to what their favorite menu would be and include that during the week so that each person in the family decides what the menu is at least one meal every week, and it be their turn, to have the kind of food that they want. That if you can pin that on the refrigerator or on a board as to what is the menu during the week, the children and the family really, really look forward to that. They feel they're part of it and they know what's going on. I think that's really important, and if you can do that, that's just great. And also that if the food is if you learn to prepare it at home, it actually starts to taste better than anything out there, than any restaurant. And the convenience and the beauty that you can surround yourself with in your own home with your own things, it starts to be preferable to something out there, so that the world doesn't seem so much more alluring when you have created the kind of home that you want. And that's one reason that I decorate. I don't think we should save it for somewhere out there or going somewhere else. I think that we can have it at home. And so once you learn about all this, then life at home is it's quite a challenge. So I wanted to also to embellish a little bit about this quote that I had for you last time. I remembered I was talking about Napoleon. Well, there were several Napoleons. I think the Napoleon the First, Napoleon the Second, Napoleon the Third. So I'm not sure which one this is. And there has been some, I noticed online after I found the quote, that there were some people who were questioning whether he really said that, and who knows. But it was such a good quote, it doesn't really matter. This is apparently what he said. Alexander, Caesar, Charlemagne, and I have founded empires. But on what did we rest the creations of our genius? Upon force. Jesus Christ founded his empire upon love, and at this hour millions of men would die for him. Now that I just thought was very interesting. I quoted it a little bit differently in my previous video, and I believe that he said several things about Christ. In fact, there's a collection of things that he said about Christ. Of course, I don't know which one it was. And some people are questioning its genuineness. I suppose everything turns into a controversy after a while, doesn't it? So I thought that was such a good quote, that generals of armies can control the world through force, but Christ controls the world through love. It's so interesting. And he wants us to come to him willingly, and it wouldn't be much of a relationship, would it, if it was a forced relationship? And of course, you're better off when people come to you willingly, even as a mom or a wife. You're better off because then it's wholehearted and not done out of obligation. So that's why it's so important, ladies, to correct your personality and not let yourself become a person that no one wants to be around when you're old. So whatever kind of personality quirks you are culturing as a young person, they will be more embedded in you and larger than life by the time you're older. It's like smoking. When you're really young, you might think that's really attractive. It looks kind of cool, looks kind of fresh. And then you look at an elderly woman smoking, it doesn't look so great anymore, does it? In fact, it exaggerates her elderliness, exaggerates her wrinkles, it exaggerates her lack of refinement. For some reason, the bad characteristics in our personalities and our habits that we develop when we're young somehow seem more exaggerated, like a sharp temper or a sharp tongue might seem kind of cute when you're young, but when you get older, it's just exaggerated and seems worse. So watch about that, because if you want to be relevant, if you want to be used and by God for something good, then you'll have to constantly correct your personality and discipline yourself. And that goes back to the mind over matter thing. You know, I said when you get dressed, don't pay any attention to the world. Don't pay any attention to the world around you. Don't listen to the news, because they're just going to keep it stirred up, one bad thing after another. Just wait a while and see what happens, and create your own news. And this is what I did, and I can think of a lot of artists that I admired from the 19th century that I have placed their paintings on my blog, and I got to looking up their era where they lived, because it'll say, you know, he was born in 18 something and died in 1902, and I'll look up their era and look at the upheaval that the news media was creating even during their existence, and yet they calmly painted and created beauty around them. So this is what we have to do, and in the home is the perfect place, because there's no interference if you will not listen to the media. And I noticed even the conservative media, which you might think is an alternative, and sometimes the religious media, all they do is take what the major media says and tell you the alternative opposite, and you're still stirring the same stuff up. It's the same subject. So that's why I suggested you make a newsletter and do one whenever you want. I've been doing mine once a week, but I can remember when I used to do it every day when my family was around me. And because it makes you focus, it helps you pour your heart out, good things on paper, and it makes you focus on possibilities and possibility thinking. So now I want to go on to, if you've got something to do, something to load, something to unload, I hope you will do that. This is not going to be a very long video today, but I wanted to show you my teacup. You've seen this before, and it's a Royal Albert. It does not have a name. They used to, some issues of them, just a minute, maybe it does have a name. Let me just see. Nope, it doesn't have a name. Many of these used to have names, and some of them do, but the older ones sometimes did not have names. Just a pretty pattern, and you've seen this before, and someone sent this to me. So thank you. Now I wanted to talk a little bit about discovery learning and how to unlearn faulty teaching methods. If you've grown up in the public school like I have, it can be quite a struggle, because what you don't understand is that not everything that they have done is really going to bring out the best in a child. And so the idea of sitting children in a row and making them sit most of the day and study most of the day and learning in a group is not always good for all children, even in a family. You know, when your child is small, how much they love to get on your lap and how eager they are to see the book that you're opening up for them to read. They just get excited, and this is the way that it should always go on, is that you can teach them in that way. When they get a little older, they can sit right next to you, right under your shoulder there, and you can show them how to write, and you can show them how to read, and you can pour love into it. And there's a scripture that I found today about how to make home teaching more appealing than the public school, and that is, kind words are like honey. They cheer you up, and here it is. Kind words are like honeycomb, sweet to the soul and healing to the bones. Proverbs 16:24. Now, my interpretation of it is this. Kind words are like honey. They cheer you up and give you confidence and make you feel strong and capable. So that's why kind words are so important when teaching children. because teaching them to read and write is part of your Christian responsibility and your responsibility as a mother and a family. That's their responsibility. And to turn them over to somebody else, how do you know you're going to like their teaching methods? And do they depress the child? And someone left a really good comment on my last video about how her experience in high school was all these books they had to read, which were depressing. It's no wonder that the teenagers go through a depression, whereas I experienced when I homeschooled my children, they didn't go through that. They didn't go through the moodiness and the they were too busy exploring their uh, talents and abilities and the possibilities of their lives. They were just too excited about that, and they were so busy. And so that's the thing, is we couldn't even have Shakespeare because I discovered so many things about Shakespeare. And someone would say, "Oh, well, don't you believe in a classical education?" Well, yes, I did. But then I got to reading. I thought I was really smart. I was going to read Shakespeare to the children, and I thought, some of that stuff was not very nice. And so I would, and also there are things in it that are tragedies. And so we were always taught, we were always told at school to read these tragedies, never the good ones, never the nice things. And so you have to be discerning about everything. And some of the books that she mentioned and stories that she mentioned in her comment, I thought, oh, it couldn't be much worse. But when I was in high school, it was. I won't even mention the titles of the books that we had to read because they're so polluting and they were so bad. And they do cause depression. They do tend to lend the idea that life is futile, that nothing good is going to happen. It's a terrible attitude. That's why I teach so much against this. These negative Nellies, I call them, the negative type of people that say things like, well, don't count on it. Well, don't wait for it. Well, it probably won't happen. And this constant attitude, it may come from their education because it's embedded in them, maybe not in so many words, but eventually the message gets to them that life is dreary, dreadful, futile. As a matter of fact, I remember in Australia in the 1960s that we had to read some Australian authors and English authors that had stories, and how I went home one day and just cried. I'd had such a terrible day at school reading these awful stories with these horrible endings and about things that happened to people that were dreadful. So, and even with the Bible, you need to be careful when you're reading to your children, that age-appropriate level of their emotions too, and don't read to them tragedies and things like that. But at home, you see, you can control it. You get to decide what the reading material will be. Is it good? Is it lovely? Is it pure? Is it just? Does it bring out the best and the strength in people? Is it inspiring? Does it make them feel like doing something with their lives? Does it make them feel good? And I'll tell you something about where I got my gumption. Where did it come from? I suppose it came somewhat from my upbringing, but when my children were real little, before they were school aged, I read about two people in the Bible, and I pondered on that because you grow up reading the Bible, some things you just don't see. You don't think about it too much. But remember the midwives in Egypt, and Pharaoh had said that the Hebrews were, it was beginning to be too populated, and they were going to outnumber the Egyptians. So Pharaoh told the midwives to kill the babies of the Hebrews. And the midwives did not obey that. They went ahead and delivered the babies. So when the government got on to them and said, I thought we told you to, prevent these babies from living. And the midwife said, oh, well, we try, but we get there, and the Hebrew women are so hardy that when we get there, the baby's already born. So, uh, and then there was Samson. And I'll tell you where I'm going with this in a minute. Samson, when pressed for the source of his strength, would throw them a bone or get them off the trail, and he would say, oh, if you tie so many um, ropes around my hand, or if you do this or you do that, then my strength will be gone. And of course they found out that he wasn't telling them the truth, because of course you never tell the enemy where the goods are. You never give away the store. You never help someone destroy someone else. And so you will never ever tell people, when we're getting around to talking about people and about schools and things like that and about the government, you don't need to tell them everything. You don't need to give information. And if you have people in your lives that like to fish for information, you're not obligated to tell something just because they asked you. You're not obligated. You can distract them. You are allowed to say that kind of like the midwives, because, and this is where I got my gumption to homeschool my children, to be a homemaker, to stay home, is these midwives, particularly these midwives, because they did not cause harm to someone. It's always wrong to cause harm to someone. And these children are in my care, and I also wanted to take care of them and see that they were not. Now, you're going to suffer enough emotional damage as it is, even if you don't send them to public school. So why add more to it? So that's one of the reasons that I did that. So I want to move on to a few other things about the home. And as I said, this is going to be quite short. And one of the reasons that um, we stay home is to get a feeling for everything. Do you have a room that you go into that you just feel kind of eerie in there, and it's just kind of uncomfortable and you don't like it? Or maybe a closet you open up and it just is scary. I would suggest that the way to alleviate that is to spend time in those areas. And that way, your home belongs to you. It's like my husband's uncle, his elderly uncle, said, he said, self, you just get behind me. And it's kind of like you walk into a room and it's bothering you because you haven't been in there a while. It seems like kind of like it needs some life in it. That's probably what the problem is you probably need to go and rearrange it, re-clean it, even if it, like I've got this one room is just a guest room, but uh, in the winter rarely is anyone there, and so it can feel kind of lonely. So I'll just go in there and just put on a different bedspread, change everything out, and give it a fresh new look. So that might be the thing that you need in a home where you're not comfortable in every single room. We all have places like that, don't we? I still have one. The other thing I wanted to remind you before I go is any any problems you have with your home, with your homemaking, and with your family, be sure to pray at first instead of at last. Don't let problems go on and on and on until you finally decide that you need to turn to the Lord. Be sure to pray at first. And then also look for possibilities. Don't just wait to see how things will turn out. If there is anything that you can possibly do that to change things, go ahead and do that, because that's why God gave us our gumption and gave us our will, so that we could use our talents and develop them, and we're in whatever situation we're in. And I have known over the years women who have taken some of the most unpromising places and turned them into lovely homes that you just wouldn't have had any hope for them to do that, and because they saw they saw the potential. And I knew one lady who had um, come out west from Oklahoma, and she said that she missed her mother and her family so much when she came out here, but she knew that she wanted to do something else with her life. So she came out here and she married a man who uh, was a construction worker. And he didn't have a lot of, I would say, ambition. He just would take a job because he wanted to earn some money. And so what she did is she helped him to keep busy and to keep those jobs coming. And then she invested their money well, and she uh, made sure that was cared for and not distracted, and he could keep working. And between the two of them, they built up a pretty good business in construction, and largely it was because of her foresight and because wanting to keep him steady, wanted to keep him on the path. And not everybody is going to have a husband that already is well established in what he does, but many people start out very young and not knowing very much. But in a large part, it's the woman who has to be the strong one and has the most encouragement, has to give the most encouragement. So you want to think about that and not lose heart when things are not running smoothly. How to have a uh, like that scripture, a brother is born for adversity. Uh, Thinking things like, well, this is just down my alley. I can do this. And some people just thrive on when there's trouble. Some people will shine through that. Other people will just melt. So if you decide it's just mind over matter, and it's anything to do with the home. If you've just moved, oh my goodness, isn't that discouraging? If you've just moved and your stuff it's like somebody took a big salad spoon and stirred all of your possessions. And if you can have your attitude is mostly, your mind is mostly what you're going to have to look after to have a good attitude. So start out by getting dressed and getting yourself prepared as though you had a work to do. Get your list out and make a list of everything that desperately has to be done, and then on another page, things that you would like to do, and start working on those little by little. Taking time out for the meals and for the needs of the family. So ladies, I hope this has been helpful to you, and I hope that you will get a lot done today. So until I see you again, God bless.